Something is happening behind the walls of the British monarchy that the palace would very much prefer you never found out about. It involves a man who has spent years quietly building his career on the strength of his mother's crown, a king who was fighting for his life while allegedly being kept in the dark about what was happening inside his own home, and a prince who had spent decades being dismissed as the least important member of the royal family, until the moment came when he was the only one willing to tell the truth. The story you are about to hear begins with a cookbook, moves through the corridors of one of the most historically sacred estates in England, and ends with consequences that are still quietly reshaping the power inside Buckingham Palace to this very day. To understand any of this, you need to understand who Tom Parker Bowles actually is. Not the polished food critic you see on television, not the charming author giving interviews about turkey and sprouts, but the man behind all of that, and what he has always understood about the unique position his mother's marriage placed him in. Tom is Queen Camilla's eldest child from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles. He is 50 years old, an award-winning food writer, a restaurant critic for the Mail on Sunday, a contributing editor for publications like Esquire and Country Life, and a regular judge on the BBC's MasterChef. On paper, it is an impressive career built on genuine talent and hard work. But there has always been something else underneath it, something that has made royal watchers and palace insiders quietly uncomfortable for years. Tom is also the godson of King Charles himself. He grew up alongside Prince William and Prince Harry, who looked up to him as a big brother figure. And when his mother became Queen of England in September 2022, following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the access he already had to the inner circles of the monarchy expanded in ways that observers inside the palace began to notice and whisper about. That access had already caused serious trouble long before Camilla became queen. In 1999, when Tom was 24 years old and working at the Cannes Film Festival, he was caught in a tabloid sting operation by the News of the World, in which he admitted to using cocaine. This came after warnings at Oxford University for possession of marijuana and ecstasy. Prince Charles, his godfather, was reportedly furious and called Tom directly to tell him he had been a bloody fool. The scandal was significant enough that the palace summoned Princes William and Harry home from Eton for a serious conversation about the dangers of that kind of influence. Tom had been seen as a cool older figure in their lives, and the fear was real that his behavior could lead them somewhere dangerous. He survived it. He rebuilt himself. He became the respected food writer the world knows today. But the pattern he established in 1999, of pushing right up to the line, of assuming that his proximity to the crown made him bulletproof, never really went away. In October 2024, Tom published a cookbook that captured exactly what people had always felt about the way he leveraged his royal connections. The book was called Cooking and the Crown: Royal Recipes from Queen Victoria to King Charles III. It drew on material from the Royal Archives at Windsor, blended centuries of royal culinary history with his own personal insights, and was sold explicitly on the back of his unique access to the monarchy, access that no other food writer in the country could come close to claiming. The book was critically praised. The Spectator called it one of the best cookbooks of the year. The Daily Mail selected it as a top gift choice. It featured recipes ranging from Queen Camilla's own porridge to the King's signature wet martini. But the question that commentators were quietly asking was the same one that always seems to follow Tom Parker Bowles. Where exactly does legitimate access end and the exploitation of royal privilege begin? That question became impossible to ignore when reports began to emerge about what had allegedly been happening at Sandringham. Sandringham is not just a country house. It is a 20,000-acre estate in Norfolk that the British royal family has owned and treasured for over a century and a half. King George V described it as the place he loved more than anywhere else on earth. Queen Elizabeth II visited every single winter of her reign to quietly mark the anniversary of her father's death there. It is where the royal family has buried its grief, celebrated its joy, and held some of the most sacred private moments of the monarchy's modern history. The estate belongs personally to the king. It is not Crown Estate property managed by a government body, it is his. And it is protected by rules of access and protocol that stretch back generations. Into this context came a series of reports that alleged Tom Parker Bowles had been using Sandringham for private commercial gatherings, food events staged for investors, publishing contacts, and media figures who were drawn not just by the food but by the extraordinary prestige of being invited inside a royal estate. According to those reports, the king's private drawing room, one of the most guarded spaces in the entire house, was allegedly transformed into a kind of showcase venue, a backdrop of royal grandeur designed to elevate the commercial value of Tom's brand and the deals being discussed inside it. Catering logs and work orders were said to show repeated clusters of large-scale food preparation events recorded only as private event at senior request, with no royal names attached, no official visits logged, and no record that King Charles had ever been informed. The approval language allegedly used in at least one document was a phrase so vague it was almost certainly designed to mislead: property released for use by family directive. Under UK law, using deliberately misleading language to obtain access to property under a false claim of authority is not a breach of etiquette. It is fraud. What made all of this so much more serious was what was happening to King Charles at the exact same time. On the 5th of February 2024, the king publicly announced that he had been diagnosed with cancer. He described it as a bit of a shock. He stepped back from public duties, began undergoing regular treatment, and trusted the people closest to him to hold the institution together while he fought one of the most frightening battles of his life. He had spent decades preparing for the crown. He had sacrificed his reputation for the woman he loved. And now, in the most vulnerable period of his reign, he was allegedly being kept completely in the dark about what was happening inside his own most private home. The man who allegedly uncovered all of this was the last person many inside the palace would have expected. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, had spent much of his life as the overlooked youngest brother, too traditional, too quiet, not quite important enough to matter in the grand calculations of royal power. But 2024 changed that completely. With the king in cancer treatment and the Princess of Wales undergoing her own health battle, Edward stepped up. He finished as the fourth busiest working royal of the year, carrying out hundreds of engagements across the United Kingdom and overseas. His brother had conferred on him the title Duke of Edinburgh, the same title their father Prince Philip had carried for more than 70 years, and with it came expanded responsibilities and a deeper authority within the institution. He took that role seriously in a way that surprised even those who had always quietly respected him. He is a man who, as royal observers have noted, has never chased the spotlight, never generated scandal, and never given the tabloids a single reason to come after him. He became, as one royal commentator put it, the safe pair of hands the monarchy desperately needed. When Edward reportedly confronted what was happening at Sandringham, he did not do it loudly. He did not leak anything to the press. He did not use it as an opportunity to position himself or score points within the family. He conducted what was framed publicly as a routine official audit of the royal estates, the kind that fell within his expanded responsibilities, and he went through everything quietly and methodically. What he allegedly found was deeply troubling. Scratched floors where heavy furniture had been dragged repeatedly across surfaces that had no business being used that way. Lingering smells of strong cooking oils that careful cleaning attempts had not fully erased. Work orders hidden inside routine maintenance records, all pointing to large-scale food events that had no official authorization and no royal name attached. And then, buried in the document archive, what sources described as a catering order carrying Tom's signature and the damning 5-word approval note that changed everything. The element that allegedly made this a Camilla story, and not just a Tom story, was what a longtime footman at the estate reportedly told Edward directly. According to those accounts, it was Queen Camilla herself who had personally authorized Tom's repeated use of Sandringham. She had instructed the staff to cooperate fully, and she had told them not to tell the king, reportedly dismissing the matter as too minor to trouble him with. The staff, men and women who had given years of loyal service to the crown, had been placed in the position of betraying the king's trust in silence, with no way out and no one to tell. The woman who had once been described privately by Queen Elizabeth II as "that wicked woman," the woman Prince Harry accused in his memoir Spare of leaking details of private royal conversations to strengthen her own press image, the woman both Harry and William had reportedly begged their father not to marry, was now allegedly running a quiet cover-up inside her husband's private home while he lay ill. Edward reportedly went directly to the king. The meeting took place in Charles's study at Buckingham Palace. Every piece of evidence was placed on the desk. And by all accounts, the moment Charles worked through those documents, the photographs of his drawing room transformed into a commercial showcase, the 5-word approval note, the proof that his own wife had given the orders and told the staff to stay silent, was one of the most painful of his reign. Not because of Tom. Tom had always pushed the limits. The wound came from Camilla, the woman he had fought the world for. The woman he had chosen over his reputation, over the pleas of his sons, over decades of public hatred. The betrayal was not about a cookbook or a dinner party. It was about trust, conducted in silence, while he was sick and frightened. The consequences that followed were handled the way the palace always handles its worst moments, without noise, without public drama, and with swift precision. Camilla was reportedly removed from several of her official duties. Her calendar was significantly reduced. Decisions that had previously flowed through her office were rerouted through the king's senior advisors. The voice she had spent years carefully building within the institution was suddenly being filtered and controlled by other people. For Tom, the consequences were more immediate and more permanent. Every informal channel of royal access he had built since his mother became queen was closed. He was barred from any further use of royal properties. The proximity to the monarchy that had powered his entire public brand, the access that made a cookbook about royal recipes possible, that filled a room with investors who believed they were inside a palace with the crown's blessing, was gone. And in December 2025, when the news emerged that Tom and his sister Laura Lopez would not be spending Christmas at Sandringham, having adopted an every-other-year arrangement, many observers who knew nothing of these allegations still noted that something in the dynamic had quietly shifted. What makes this story matter beyond the gossip and the drama is what it reveals about the monarchy itself in this particular moment. King Charles is a king who has spent his entire adult life waiting for the crown, sacrificed enormously for it, and now holds it while fighting cancer and watching the institution he loves navigate one of the most turbulent periods in its modern history. Prince Edward, the quiet one, the overlooked one, the man nobody wrote long features about until 2024, turned out to be the person willing to do what needed to be done, not for headlines, not for power, but because someone had to. And Camilla, who has spent years carefully constructing a public image of warmth and steadiness after one of the most difficult introductions to public life any royal consort has ever faced, reportedly allowed her loyalty to her son to override her loyalty to her husband at precisely the moment he needed her most. The palace will never confirm any of this officially. That is not how the institution operates. It does not wash its wounds in public. It manages, it contains, and it moves forward. But the people inside those walls know what happened. The staff who were ordered into silence know. And now, slowly, the rest of the world is beginning to understand that the most dangerous threats to a monarchy do not always come from outside. Sometimes they walk straight through the front door, carrying a cookbook and a sense of absolute entitlement, while the king is too ill to check who gave them the keys.